Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be tackling data sovereignty.
Okay.
It's something it's
Yeah.
really crucial in our digital world right now. And you shared with us the Dataversity article, Navigating the Complex Landscape of Data Sovereignty.
Yes.
And it's fascinating how the digital landscape is shifting.
It is.
We're seeing more and more countries essentially setting their own rules for how data can be used within their borders.
It's like drawing lines in the digital sand.
It is.
Yeah.
So the big question that we're going to be exploring today is how can businesses operate effectively
Yeah.
in this globalized world while also navigating this
Uh-huh.
complex web of data borders?
Right. Because on the one hand, we have this push for, a globalized, interconnected
Right.
digital economy.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have these growing data sovereignty regulations.
Yeah. How do those two forces coexist?
It's a bit of a paradox.
It is.
I think the key is to understand that data sovereignty isn't just about restricting data flows.
Right.
It's also about ensuring responsible and ethical data handling practices.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So let's break down exactly what we mean by data sovereignty.
Okay.
For our listener, it's not just about where servers are physically located, right?
Right. Data sovereignty means that digital information is subject to the laws of the nation where it's stored and processed.
So even if a company is based in the
Yep.
U.S., for example,
Right.
but they're storing customer data in Europe,
Right.
that data falls under European data protection laws,
Mhm.
like GDPR.
Exactly.
And we're seeing this trend gain momentum globally.
Yeah.
The article highlights several reasons for this,
Uh-huh.
but security concerns seem to be top of mind for a lot of these countries.
Absolutely. Governments are increasingly concerned about protecting their citizens' data from cyber attacks and foreign surveillance.
It's almost like every country is becoming its own digital fortress,
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that for sure.
guarding its data assets.
But data sovereignty is also driven by economic and political considerations.
So it's not just about protection.
Right.
It's about power and economic advantage.
Precisely. And we see this playing out in different ways around the world.
Like how?
The EU's GDPR, for instance, has set a high bar for data protection globally.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have countries like China with their own strict data localization laws,
Right.
which have sparked debates about data protectionism and digital trade barriers.
So it's creating a very complex patchwork of regulations
It is.
for businesses to navigate,
Yeah.
especially for companies that are operating in multiple regions.
Absolutely. The article touches on some of the key challenges, such as data localization.
Right.
This can be particularly tricky for companies that rely on global cloud providers.
Because they might be forced to store data in a specific country, even if it's not the most efficient
Exactly.
or cost-effective solution.
Imagine a healthcare company
Yeah.
that wants to use a cloud-based platform to store patient data. They might have to create separate secure databases in each country they operate in,
Right.
even if the app itself is identical.
Wow, that sounds like a logistical nightmare
It can be.
and very expensive.
And then there's the challenge of compliance.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping up with the ever-changing tapestry of data sovereignty laws across different regions is a major undertaking.
So it's not just a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process
It is.
of monitoring, adapting,
Right.
making sure that you're in compliance even as the rules change.
Absolutely.
That has to be a drain on resources for businesses.
It is, and failure to comply can lead to significant fines, legal battles, and reputational damage.
It's a high-stakes game.
It is.
But beyond the immediate cost of compliance,
Right.
I'm also curious about the broader impact on innovation.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that these restrictions on data flows could stifle certain types of innovation,
Yeah, that's a key concern.
particularly those that rely on large centralized data sets.
Right, and I think we're already seeing some of the effects. For example, the development of real-time analytics and AI applications that require seamless cross-border data sharing
Right.
could be significantly hindered.
And that has implications for all of us, right?
It does.
Slower development of new technologies, less personalized experiences,
Potentially.
maybe even delays in areas like medical research or fraud detection.
Yeah, data is the fuel that drives innovation in so many fields.
Right.
And restricting its flow could have a ripple effect across the entire digital economy.
So we have this tension
We do.
between the need for data protection
Right.
and the desire for this dynamic, innovative digital ecosystem.
Right.
How do we find that balance?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that many businesses and policymakers are grappling with right now.
The article mentions that some traditional approaches to data security and compliance are no longer sufficient
They're not.
in this new landscape.
Techniques like microsegmentation or tokenization,
Right.
while useful for certain aspects of data protection, often lack the flexibility and scalability needed to address the full scope of data sovereignty challenges.
So we need new solutions,
We do.
new approaches that can address both the compliance requirements
Right.
and the need for, a vibrant data-driven economy.
Mm-hmm.
That's where these new data platforms come in, right? The ones
Yes.
specifically designed to navigate these data sovereignty complexities.
That's what we'll be exploring in part 2 of this deep dive.
Okay, fantastic.
We'll delve into the specifics of how these platforms work, what features they offer,
Great.
and how they might just be the key to unlocking a future where both data sovereignty and innovation can thrive.
I'm excited to learn more about that.
Welcome back to our deep dive on data sovereignty. Before we move on to those data platforms,
Okay.
I think it's worth highlighting one more challenge
Okay.
that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, what's that?
It's not just about keeping data in certain locations.
Right.
It's also about managing the flow of data between regions.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah, companies need to be incredibly careful
Yeah.
about how they transfer data across borders, especially when dealing with sensitive personal information.
Because what might be perfectly acceptable in one country could be a major violation in another.
Exactly. So it's not enough to just comply with the laws of one region.
Right.
Businesses need to have a comprehensive strategy
Oh.
for managing cross-border data flows.
Right.
That takes into account the regulations of all relevant jurisdictions.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It can be.
Almost like trying to solve a multi-dimensional puzzle
Yeah.
where the pieces are constantly shifting.
And this is where those new data platforms we mentioned earlier come in.
Okay, let's dive into that.
They're designed to not just store data securely,
Right.
but to actually help businesses manage these complex data flows in a way that aligns with data sovereignty requirements.
Okay, what makes these platforms different from traditional data management solutions?
One of the key differentiators is the concept of data residency control.
Okay.
These platforms allow companies to specify exactly where their data is stored and processed.
So instead of having data scattered across various servers in different locations,
Right.
businesses can essentially choose to keep their European data in Europe, their U.S. data in the U.S., and so on.
Precisely. And this level of control is crucial for meeting those data localization requirements we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having designated data vaults for each region,
Okay.
each adhering to the specific regulations of that location.
That's a great analogy. But even with these designated data vaults,
Right.
wouldn't managing all that data across different regions become a logistical nightmare?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But these new platforms are designed to streamline those operations.
Okay.
They typically offer centralized management tools that allow businesses to oversee all their data regardless of where it's physically located from a single dashboard.
So it's like having a master control panel
You can-
for your global data operations, allowing you to monitor data flows, enforce security policies, and ensure compliance across all regions simultaneously.
And that's a huge advantage in terms of efficiency and reducing the overall burden of compliance.
Right.
But it's not just about making things easier for businesses.
Right.
These platforms can also benefit individuals.
How so?
Well, because data is being managed more responsibly and transparently,
Okay.
it can actually enhance data privacy and security for users.
Interesting.
Individuals can have more confidence knowing that their data is being handled in accordance with the laws and regulations of their own country.
That's a good point. I think a lot of people, myself included, have felt a growing sense of unease about how our data is being used and shared in this digital age.
Yeah,
Maybe these platforms can help restore some of that trust.
that's the hope, by giving individuals more control over their data and ensuring that companies are held accountable for responsible data handling practices.
Right.
These platforms have the potential to create a more equitable and trustworthy digital environment.
Okay, so we've talked about data residency control
Uh-huh.
and centralized management.
Yeah.
Are there any other key features that set these platforms apart?
Absolutely. Security is paramount.
Okay.
These platforms are built with robust security measures, often exceeding standard industry practices.
Like what kind of measures?
We're talking multi-layered encryption, strict access controls, intrusion detection systems,
Wow.
and even features that minimize data exposure to third-party providers.
So they're not just complying with regulations, they're going above and beyond to really safeguard data.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like Fort Knox for the digital age.
And these enhanced security measures not only protect sensitive information,
Right.
but also help businesses mitigate the risk of data breaches and the hefty penalties that often come with them.
It's a win-win situation.
It is.
But let's be realistic.
Okay.
These platforms sound incredibly sophisticated. I imagine implementing them must be a complex and costly undertaking.
It's true that implementing these platforms requires careful planning and expertise.
Yeah.
But there are options available for businesses of all sizes.
Oh.
Some providers offer flexible deployment models, including cloud-based solutions that can be scaled to meet the needs of growing companies.
So you don't necessarily have to build your own massive data infrastructure
You don't.
to benefit from these advanced features.
Exactly. And as these platforms become more widely adopted,
Yeah.
we're likely to see the costs come down and the technology become more accessible to a wider range of businesses.
That's good to hear. It sounds like these platforms could be a game changer in terms of how businesses approach data sovereignty,
I think so.
turning what seems like a burden into a strategic advantage.
That's the idea. And it's not just about compliance.
Right.
By embracing these platforms, businesses can unlock new possibilities for innovation and growth.
Okay.
Think about it when you can confidently access and analyze data within the boundaries of data sovereignty.
Yeah.
You open up new avenues for product development, market research, and customer insights.
It's like turning a constraint into a catalyst for creativity.
That's exactly.
Instead of seeing data sovereignty as a barrier,
Yeah.
businesses can start to view it as an opportunity to develop more responsible, secure, and ultimately more valuable data-driven solutions.
Now you're getting it. Data sovereignty isn't about stifling innovation. It's about fostering a more sustainable, ethical, and ultimately more resilient digital ecosystem.
This has been incredibly insightful. It sounds like these platforms have the potential to really reshape how businesses operate in a data-driven world.
I agree.
But what about the broader implications for society?
That's a great question.
We've talked about the economic and technological impacts,
Uh-huh.
but how does data sovereignty affect individuals on a personal level?
That's a crucial question, and it's one we'll be exploring in part 3 of this deep dive.
Okay.
Join us as we delve into the ethical considerations, the potential impact on privacy, and the broader societal implications of living in a world where data has borders.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about the technical and business aspects of data sovereignty, but I think it's time we shift gears a little bit and consider
Right.
the bigger picture, the societal implications.
Absolutely. Data sovereignty isn't just a technological or legal issue.
Right.
It has profound implications for how we think about individual rights,
Yeah.
national identity,
Mm-hmm.
and the very fabric of our digital society.
I think a lot of people hear data sovereignty
Yeah.
and their minds immediately jump to censorship or government overreach.
Sure.
Are those valid concerns?
I think it's certainly something to be mindful of.
Okay.
The way these laws are implemented can vary widely from country to country in
Yeah.
some cases.
Yeah.
Data sovereignty regulations could be used to restrict freedom of speech or limit access to information.
So it's not a simple black and white issue.
It's not.
There's potential for both positive and negative outcomes,
Right.
depending on how these regulations are enforced and interpreted.
Exactly. It's a complex equation with a lot of variables.
It is.
But, let's focus on the potential benefits for a moment.
Okay.
One of the most compelling arguments in favor of data sovereignty
Yeah.
is that it empowers individuals to have more control over their personal information.
Like giving people the right to say,
Yeah.
this is my data.
Exactly.
I have a say in how it's used.
Precisely. And in a world where data breaches and privacy violations are becoming increasingly common,
Right.
that sense of control can be incredibly empowering.
Especially as our lives become, more and more intertwined with the digital realm.
Absolutely.
We're constantly generating data through our online activities,
Yeah.
our smartphones, even our smart home devices.
It's true. Data has become an integral part of our lives. And with that comes a responsibility to ensure that it's handled ethically and responsibly.
Mhm.
Data sovereignty, when implemented thoughtfully, can be a powerful tool for achieving that,
But couldn't it also lead to a more fragmented internet?
potentially.
If every country has its own set of data regulations,
Yeah.
wouldn't that make it harder for information to flow freely across borders?
That's the big debate, isn't it?
It is. Some argue that data sovereignty is leading us towards a splinter net,
A splinternet.
where the global internet we know today fractures into a collection of regional networks,
Wow.
each with its own rules and restrictions.
That sounds like it could have significant consequences for global communication,
It could.
collaboration, even cultural exchange.
Think about the impact on scientific research, for example.
Okay.
If researchers can't easily access and share data across borders,
Yeah.
it could slow down the pace of discovery and innovation.
Or consider the implications for businesses operating in a globalized economy.
Right.
We talked earlier about the challenges of data localization,
Yeah.
but imagine trying to coordinate a global marketing campaign
Right.
or manage a supply chain in a world where data is constantly getting caught up, especially
Exactly.
these digital border crossings.
It would be incredibly inefficient and costly,
Yeah.
and it could create new barriers to entry for businesses trying to expand into new markets.
So while data sovereignty aims to protect individuals and nations, right,
It could inadvertently have unintended consequences for the global economy
it could.
and the free flow of information.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations,
Yeah.
to weigh the potential benefits against the risks
Mm.
and to find ways to mitigate those risks.
Right.
We need to be thinking about how to design data sovereignty frameworks that protect individual rights without stifling innovation or hindering global cooperation.
It's a challenge that requires collaboration, not just between governments,
It does.
but also businesses,
Mhm.
technologists, civil society.
Absolutely. We need to move beyond the rhetoric and start having pragmatic conversations about how to navigate this new data landscape in a way that benefits everyone.
This deep dive has really highlighted the complexity of this issue.
It has.
It's not just about compliance or technology.
It's not.
It's about our values,
It is.
our priorities, and how we envision the future of the internet.
Well said. Data sovereignty is a reflection of our evolving relationship with data in the digital world. It's forcing us to grapple with fundamental questions about privacy,
Yeah.
security, national sovereignty, and the role of technology in our lives.
It's a conversation that's only going to become more important in the years to come.
I agree.
So to our listener, we encourage you to continue exploring these issues,
Yeah.
to engage in these debates, and to be an active participant in shaping the future of our digital society.
And remember, knowledge is power.
That's right.
The more you understand about data sovereignty, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this complex landscape and make informed decisions about how your own data is used and protected.
It has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of data sovereignty.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the technical intricacies to the broader societal implications. It's a topic that's sure to keep us all thinking and talking for a long time to come.
Indeed, thanks for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep diving deep.